Chapters 8 and 9. Adam felt his knees tremble and his heart pound loud and hard in his ears. The Indian stood square between him and the rifle. He folded his big arms and stared down at Adam. A long blade hunting knife with a stag-horn handle glistened at his belt. 1,000 thoughts flashed through Adam's head all at once. He couldn't get to the gun. Maybe he could dodge around the Indian and still make it. Maybe the Indian would draw his knife, and what would happen to Mother and Lori? And then the thoughts stopped. Adam felt the muscles in his legs draw tight. His fists clenched at his sides. There was no way to make it to the rifle. Mother and Lori stood trembling as he glanced over his shoulder. They held their arms around each other, and already the tears streaked down their cheeks. There was only one thing to do. It was a gamble, but a risk he'd have to take. It was his life for theirs. His tense muscles snapped like the string of a bow. "Run, Mother!" he screamed. The very instant he yelled, he flung himself at the Indian, ramming his head square into the man's naked stomach. The Indian jumped. Above him, Adam could hear a whoosh of air rush out of his mouth. Then strong hands grabbed his shoulders, only they were too late to pry him loose. Adam locked his arms around the man's legs. "Run!" he screamed again. "I got him! Run!" Adam tightened his hold. There was a bare leg right there in his face, so Adam clamped his teeth into it as hard as he could. There was a sudden startled yell from the red man. He tried to pull Adam loose, but Adam clung to him like a snapping turtle. At last, as if Adam weighed no more than a scrawny pine cone, the Indian picked him up by the legs. He yanked Adam loose and held him at arm's length. Everything was upside down. Adam tried to kick, but the Indian's hands were like iron bars around his legs. He swung his fists, but all he hit was empty air. Another man stood in the doorway. The man was upside down, like everything else, but Adam recognized him. He had on a buckskin pants with fringe and a red and black plaid shirt. Ruff, the red pup, stood wagging his tail beside him. "Sam!" Adam screeched. "Sam, help me!" It was hard to hear while hanging upside down with the sound of his heart pounding the blood in his ears, but Adam heard an exchange of words between Sam and the Indian. It was a language strange to him. The words made no sense at all. Suddenly, Adam was spun in the air. Everything whirled around, and he landed on his feet in front of the Indian. The man held him at arm's length. All the anger seemed to leave the red man's face. This was the first time Adam had really looked at his eyes, and when he did, a little shudder of sadness rushed through him. For some reason, he stopped flinging his arms and kicking at his captor. Instead, he stood staring into those deep, sad eyes. The Indian spoke again in a strange language. Then he pushed Adam back gently. He handed him to Sam. Adam closed his eyes. No longer than a blink, it seemed. But when he opened them again, the Indian was gone, as quickly and silently and unexpectedly as he had come. Everything happened so fast after that, Adam almost lost track of it all. Sam patted him on the shoulder and said something to him about being a man. Mother and Lori rushed over. They hugged Sam and Adam. They kissed him and kept asking him if he was all right and if the Indian had hurt him. Mother had 1,000 questions, but Sam waited until all the crying and fussing was over before he answered. He just kept saying that everything was all right, and finally, when Mother and Lori settled down, he got everybody over to the table, sitting down and quiet. "His name is Shawanotok," Sam started, answering all the questions Mother had rattled off at him. "He's a Teton Indian and a friend of mine, probably the only real friend I ever had. He came here because I asked him to. There was something I had to know, and him helping was the only way I could find out for dead certain." He gave a sort of sheepish look as he glanced across at Adam. Then he turned to face away, ashamed to look Adam in the eye. "A few weeks back, I told Adam it was time he became a man. I was pretty sure he'd made it, but I had to know for certain. I told Shawanotok to come in, because I had to see what Adam would do." Mother's eyes flared. "You mean you sent him in? You had him bust into my house and scare us half to death?" Sam had that sheepish look on his face again. "Yes. I swear, Sam, I never heard the like. If you ever..." Mother started scolding him, only Sam didn't pay her any attention. He was looking at Adam and almost smiling at him. "Remember how I told you a few weeks ago that I might have to leave?" Despite Mother's scolding, Adam could hear Sam's voice. He nodded. "I remember." Sam continued. "And I told you that when I did have to leave, I wanted to make sure I was leaving the place in the hands of a man." Adam nodded again. Sam reached across the table and put a big, rough hand on his. "I got me a man to take care of the place now." Mother had stopped her fussing to listen to what they were saying. Sam went on. "It was a mean, rotten trick, but it was the only way. I had to know what you would do if he was faced with danger. I figured you'd do right. Now I know. You were willing to get yourself killed to protect your mother and sister." Sam squeezed his hand. "I'm right proud of you, Adam. Right proud." Adam felt his chest puff up like he was going to bust. He never thought about how good those words would sound coming from Sam. He'd never felt so big and grown up in his life. Mother squeezed Lori to her. There was a scared, worried look on her face. "What's this talk about leaving?" she asked. Sam rocked back in his chair. "It's a long story, and there ain't much time for telling it. Shawanotok was following them men that come here this afternoon. They killed some of his people. When they left here, he come and told me about it. We snuck up on their camp a little while back, and I listened in on what they was planning. 2 of them are fixing to make a trip to Cheyenne to see if I done filed on this land. If I ain't, they're planning to stake it for a gold claim. They got a sluice box built where Jenny Creek runs into Wind River, so you know they found at least some gold. Mother frowned and shook her head. You mean just because they found gold, they can take our land away from us? Sam shrugged. I made my improvements on this land, and I've waited 7 years, only I ain't filed my deed yet. If they beat me to Cheyenne, they can file first, claiming our land as theirs. Adam wiggled around in his chair. Why would they want our land? They aren't farmers, are they? Sam shook his head. They found gold in the stream. That means there's a big deposit of gold someplace upstream. They'll stake as much land as they can, then move their claims on upriver until they find the mother lode. Our land just happens to be in their path. Sam eased from his chair. He looked Adam straight in the eye. Gold does funny things to men, Adam. Even when good men get the smell of gold, they sometimes get greedy and treacherous. These ain't even good men. You'll have to watch the place all the time I'm gone. Shawanotuck will be around, but don't count on him. You can only count on yourself. Be ready for anything that might happen. Then he smiled. I'm sure you can handle things. You're man enough for it. He turned to Mother. I'll need some food and supplies. Why don't you help me so I can get an early start? Adam, you best get some sleep. You'll need your rest if you're going to take over things while I'm gone. He nodded and excused himself from the table. Adam's bed was in the loft that opened above the main room. After he got his nightshirt on and was ready for bed, he crawled in on the corn shuck mattress and leaned over the side so he could look down at Mother and Sam. They kept busy for a long time, Mother fixing jerky and stewed venison for Sam to take with him. Sam cleaned and worked on his rifle. Then he got a good fire going in the fireplace and got his lead mold so he could make plenty of shot for the flintlock rifle. Adam watched them as long as he could, but after a time, his eyes got to fluttering and hurting for sleep. He tried to fight it off and stay awake. He wanted to keep listening, even though their voices were too soft and too far away for him to understand. After a while, he fell into quiet dreams that night brings. Chapter 9. Adam had a hard time waking up the next morning. When he opened his eyes, it felt like someone had poured sand in them. He finally managed to get out of bed and look over the edge of the loft. No one was around. The cabin was empty. Afraid he might miss something, he dressed quickly and climbed down. A quick look told him Sam had already gone. The rifle was missing. The supplies Mother had fixed the night before were gone also. He felt a little shake run through him. For the first time, he experienced the weight of responsibilities Sam had placed on him. And instead of getting up early and doing his chores and watching the place, he overslept. He rushed to the window and squinted his eyes against the glare of the early morning light. Mother was hanging her wash on the line beside the cabin. He sighed with relief, knowing she was all right. Lori was outside on the porch, playing with her apple doll. Ruff was lying beside her feet, gnawing on a deer bone. Mother came back to the house while he was watching Lori and Ruff. Morning, she greeted. Have a good sleep? Adam frowned. Why didn't you wake me when Sam left? I'm supposed to watch things while he's gone, remember? Mother walked to the stove and pulled out a pan of biscuits. I figured I'd let you sleep, she answered. You got a lot of work to do today. The cow busted out of her pen last night, and you got to chop rails to fix it. Sam figured it was that pesky mountain lion again. Come over and eat your breakfast. She put the biscuits on the table and pulled some eggs and venison from a skillet near the fireplace. Adam took his plate over to the window. Mother was right about him needing to eat breakfast. It would take a lot of energy to fix that corral. He stuffed some biscuits in his mouth, finished his breakfast, and headed for the pen. I'll be back when I get that fence tended, he told Mother. Don't let Lori get too far from the house and keep watch on things while I'm out there. Mother nodded. Don't work too hard, she cautioned. Adam nodded. Be back in a while. It took nearly half a day to get the pen back together. The dumb old cow had tried to jump one of the rails, and from the looks of things, she managed to land right on top of the fence. 3 rails were busted clean in two, and both posts were cracked. That meant Adam had to bring in 4 rails. He had to chop the trees down, then strip the limbs and bark and make sure they were cut the right length. Next, he had to dig up the cracked stakes and put new ones in their place and notch them so the rails would fit. When he came inside for lunch, Mother had a good meal fixed, but Adam was so tired he could barely eat. Even the fork felt heavy when he picked it up. His arms and shoulders ached from swinging the axe. He didn't notice the blisters on his hands until he sat down. They made it troublesome to even pick up the food, much less use a knife to cut the deer steaks Mother had fried. When he finished eating, there wasn't even time for a nap. As he was hauling saplings to fix the fence, he noticed that the corn needed hoeing. Before he went out, he got 2 old shirts from his room. He shredded them and used the strips of rags to wrap his hands. That way, the hoe handle wouldn't tear up the blisters he'd already got from swinging the axe. He was so tired that evening at supper, he nearly fell out of his chair. Still, he managed to stay awake. He even managed to sit up tall and straight, feeling mighty proud of himself for doing all the work that needed to be done. He could tell that Mother was proud of him, too, by the way she looked at him. And the next morning she even fixed him a pot of coffee for breakfast, just like she did for Sam. "You best take it a little easy today," she cautioned when he left the house. "Don't try to do too much. You work as hard today as you did yesterday, and you'll be plumb tuckered. Sam will be gone might near a week. You don't have to do everything in one day." Adam nodded. "Yes, ma'am." But he knew inside that he would do anything that needed to be done. No matter how tired he was or how much he'd rather rest and play, he was the man of the place now, and he'd do the man's work. And so it went for the next 5 days. He cut hay as feed for the cows. He chopped wood for heat during the long Wyoming territory winters. There was nothing much to break up the work, just the same old thing, hour after hour. A couple of times Adam spotted the Indian, Shanotok, watching him, but the man always stayed a long distance away. He never once came close enough for Adam to get a good look at him or even to say hello. So Adam kept working when he'd rather play. Mother kept working and doing her washing and cooking, and Lori and Ruff kept playing and lazing around the place like kids do. All of them were watchful and alert, hoping Sam would hurry and come back.